Hello, everyone. Welcome to this, what will be our main Christmas message on these videos. I have intentionally not done a lot of holiday themed messages, and we've kind of looked at Christmas the last two videos, but we haven't really had what would be considered a Christmas message. And today, this one will go live 1 week before Christmas. And then the next video after that, we will look at a New Year's message, possibly the next two videos after that. We are going to be doing videos ahead up until the middle of February because my circumstance is going to change here and I'm not going to be sure of my ability to do the videos. And so we're going to do those up ahead. And so you might hear messages that maybe in the timing of them may not make much sense to you, but I think the messages will be important as we will be looking at the sanctity of life coming up and Stand for Israel Sunday, and we're actually going to do two messages off of that. And so we've got a number of things planned that hopefully will minister to you and be an encouragement to you in this very, very uncertain time. Now, with that said, as we get ready to go into our Christmas message, and I've not shown a silly side of me at all in these videos because I just haven't felt like there was much to be silly about. As God has allowed me to be in ministry to a number of people that are just struggling and battling, and I will admit to you as I sit before this camera today, I'm one of those. I'm struggling and battling. Sometimes we just need to have a smile put on our face because God's still in control. If our trust is in Him, we're not going to be afraid. If I raise up a little bit, maybe you can see my shirt, my cross. My cross says, "Fear not." And that's why we don't need to fear, is because Jesus Christ went to the cross and He won. And so we've got lots of things to celebrate and be happy about. And again, for my different friends on here that watch, and some of you think we should celebrate Christmas and some of you don't. And when I talk about the Christmas messages, I say to you again, I'm talking about the birth of Christ, not trees and wreaths and lights and all of that kind of thing. If you enjoy that, fine. If you don't, fine. That's insignificant to the messages. But it's very significant that Jesus was born. And so we're going to go into the message in just a moment. But before I do, I copied this many years ago. If you could see this paper, you could see that it's even yellowing from the copying, and I have no recollection of where I got it from. But I hope that maybe it might put a smile on your face with holiday eating tips. Anybody concerned about your eating on the holidays? I'm not. Okay, number one. Avoid carrot sticks. Anyone who puts carrots on a holiday buffet table knows nothing of the Christmas spirit. In fact, if you see carrots, leave immediately and go next door where they are serving the fattening stuff. Good advice. Number two, drink as much eggnog as you can, quickly. It's rare. You can't find it any other time of the year but now. So drink up. Who cares that it has 10,000 calories in every sip? It's not as if you're going to, as if you are going to turn into an eggnog alcoholic or something. It's a treat. Enjoy it. Have one for me. Have two. It's later than you think. It's Christmas. And this is just inserted in. I drink eggnog. I love eggnog, but not with alcohol in it. Okay, just thrown in there for extra. Number three, if something comes with gravy, use it. That's the whole point of gravy. Gravy does not stand alone. Pour it on. Make a volcano out of your mashed potatoes. Fill it with gravy. Eat the volcano, and then repeat step three. Number four, as for mashed potatoes, always ask if they're made with skim milk or whole milk. If it's skim, pass. Why bother? It's like buying a sports car with an automatic transmission. Number 5, do not have a snack before going to a party in an effort to control your eating. I don't know if any of you have ever done that or not. I have done that numerous times where I kind of snacked so that I kind of took care of my appetite and then I hardly ate. So this is saying don't do that. The whole point of going to a Christmas party is to eat other people's food for free. Lots of it. Hello? Number 6. Under no circumstances should you exercise between now and New Year's. You can do that in January when you have nothing else to do. This is the time for long naps, which you'll need after circling the buffet table while carrying a 10-pound plate of food and that vat of eggnog. Number 7. If you come across something really good at a buffet table, like frosted Christmas cookies in the shape and size of Santa, position yourself near them and don't budge. Have as many as you can before becoming the center of attention. They're like a beautiful pair of shoes. If you leave them behind, you'll never get to see them again. Number 8. Same for pies. Apple, pumpkin, mincemeat, have a slice of each. Or if you don't like mincemeat, that's me, have 2 apples and 1 pumpkin. Always have 3. When else do you get to have more than one dessert? Labor Day? Number 9. Did someone mention fruitcake? Granted, it's loaded with the mandatory celebratory calories, but avoid it at all costs. I mean, have some standards. Number 10. One final tip. If you don't feel terrible when you leave the party or get up from the table, you haven't been paying attention. Reread tips, start over, but hurry. January is just around the corner. Remember this motto to live by. Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in an attractive and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in sideways, chocolate in one hand, body thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and screaming, "Woohoo! What a ride!" I hope that just maybe something in that might have put a smile on your face. I don't know. If not, then you can fast forward through it the next time and not pay any attention to it. We're going to read from Luke chapter 2, verses 40 to 49, and I'm going to get back to serious here. The message is Christmas Home Alone, and this actually struck me a number of years ago. And I wrote down the ideas from this, and so I've used it a couple of times. Some of you might have heard it before, but I hope that you are blessed in this special Christmas message, starting with Luke chapter 2, verse 40. And the child grew and waxed strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast. And when they had fulfilled the days, as they returned, the child Jesus tarried behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother knew not of it. But they, supposing him to have been in the company, went a day's journey, and they sought him among their kinsfolk and acquaintance. And when they found him not, they turned back again to Jerusalem, seeking him. And it came to pass that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions. And all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. And when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said unto him, Son, why hast thou thus dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. And he said unto them, How is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not that I must be about my Father's business? My daughter and I have always enjoyed watching the Home Alone movies. We've watched them numerous times through the years. And it's a story, it's just kind of you have to take it with humor story. If you watch it too intently, you will realize that most of it is not realistic in any fashion or in any way, but it's just meant to be entertaining and funny, and we enjoy watching it. A little boy is left behind at Christmas time in his home in Chicago. In Home Alone 2, he gets onto a different plane and his family end up in Florida and he ends up in New York. And so it's a little bit different storyline, but basically the idea stays the same. This kid could have a real complex by the time this happens twice. It's bad enough if you're forgotten once, but it's pretty bad if they mess up twice and leave you in this kind of situation. In Home Alone 1 and 2, the main theme of the story is this little boy goes up, I think he's 8 in number 1 and 10 in number 2, and he goes up against two very hardened, mean criminals. And he just basically does some just terrible things to them. Just hits them in the face with irons and paint cans and all kinds of things that goes on, shoots them with a BB gun and all this kind of stuff. And if you watch it a little bit, you get the concept that just because people are older does not necessarily make them smarter. And we hear that a lot in our society, and I feel like, maybe some of you will understand this, and it's a little bit cliche, that I thought I was a whole lot smarter when I was young. And the older I get, the less smart I feel like I am. And yet society tells us that age makes you smarter. Well, that's not necessarily true. Jesus is left home alone. Now, Mike, what do you mean by that? Well, the thought struck me as I was putting together the message that the temple is Jesus' home. The temple is the building where God dwelt in. For all of those years, he was behind the veil. His presence was behind the veil, but his presence was very, very real in that temple. And so this is Jesus' home. And at 12 years old, mother and father and all of the family and friends go on back home to Bethlehem, and Jesus stays at the temple. He's home, and he's alone at 12 years old. The ones that are supposed to be the masters, the teachers and the doctors and the scribes and all of them, Jesus is sitting teaching them, and they're amazed that this little boy can know what he knows. And so just because these ones were teachers and scribes and all of that, and they were older and supposedly more knowledgeable, they weren't smarter at all. Little 12-year-old Jesus was all-knowing. Little 12-year-old Jesus was omniscient. And there was nothing beyond him. And so he's in the temple alone with what is really hardened criminals. They prove out to be hardened criminals as the story plays out in this. But he is teaching them. And can you imagine? Mary and Joseph has to be pretty miffed. Boy, if I was the parent, I would be miffed in that situation. I mean, not only do they walk away 2 days and then have to come all the way back, but it takes them 3 days there to find out where Jesus is at in the temple teaching these doctors and leaders and all of them. He's there. And Mary says, basically, son, why have you done this to us? Why have you done this to us? Why have you left us in this place? And I can only imagine, my 2 kids have been out of my sight only a few times when they were little. And when they went out of my sight, it didn't take very long for me to just kind of begin to go ballistic until I found them. And if you're parents that have had that situation, you know what I'm talking about. And so as I talk about that, we realize that Mary and Joseph would have just been beside themselves by the time they finally found Jesus. And this 12-year-old little boy responds to them, didn't you know that I'd be about my Father's business? His work? His capital? Didn't you know that? What kind of a response is that from a 12-year-old? When I think about that as a daddy, I think probably my response to that little 12-year-old probably wouldn't have been very good. What was the Father's business? It was the cross. Let me lean up there again so maybe you can see it on my shirt. That was the Father's business. All of the other things that Jesus did led to that moment in time that the Father's business in sending Jesus to this earth would be fulfilled. The cross, Jesus to die on the cross. And he's setting this up. The cross is the Father's business. And he is ultimately talking to these people who would ultimately lead him to the cross. The very Pharisees and Sadducees, the Sanhedrin, the leaders that are sitting in the temple listening to this little boy teach them, would be the same ones some 21 years later that would lead him to the cross. Jesus was about his Father's business, doing what God had for him to do. I really like the relationship between Mary and Jesus. I've often thought about that on my own. One of my favorite parts of the great movie, The Passion, that is really hard to watch, but one of my favorite parts of it is the interaction between Jesus and Mary that is shown in that movie. When Jesus and Mary get into kind of a discussion over things and Jesus flips water on her, we want to make everything so holy and pious. I doubt it was. I doubt it was. I think probably Jesus and Mary had a tremendous relationship with each other. And their relationship is interesting, and you see that when Jesus performs his first miracle in Cana of Galilee. Mary says, "Go get Jesus, they're out of wine." And again, even though he's 30 years old in this situation, his response, "Woman, what have I to do with you? It's not my time yet." I think if my mom was still alive to this day, I would never say to her, "What do I have to do with you?" And I love Mary's response. Mary doesn't get mad or he's going to do it for you. Just do what he says. Don't pay any attention to this other. The birth of a child is quite a life-changing experience. Honestly, next to Jesus filling my heart, there's probably nothing that has changed me more than the birth of my two children, Michael and Michaela. You have all kinds of dreams for them. I still do. I still do, and they're both in their 20s now, and I have dreams for their future. You know, when they're really little and you're watching them do things and you think maybe they'll be a singer or a musician or a sports hero or a movie star. What a lot of people don't understand is that we pastors that really care about the people that we minister to and that we shepherd, they become just like our children. They are our sheep. And we have lots of dreams for them in their walk with Christ. We have lots of dreams and hopes that things will work out in their lives in just spectacular ways. And just like with children, it is the same with the church. You see them go through struggles and your heart breaks for them and you wish better things for them. But you have to watch them go through these things because that is something that just is necessary. My dad, among doing other things, spent many years as a pastor in my early life. I watched him as a pastor. I sat in his office numerous times when I was a little kid, watched devastating things happen to him as churches and people turned on him. That's what churches and people do. And I watched him go through those things. And if you would have asked me as I was growing up, what do you want to be? You want to know what the last thing on my list was? A pastor. I did not in any circumstances ever want to be a pastor. I didn't want to follow in my dad's footsteps and go through the things that I had seen him go through in my early life. And he never pushed me to become a pastor. He never pushed me at all. But ultimately, that was my destiny. That was what God called me to do. To be in ministry to people and His people. And although both of them have secular jobs, both of my children are ordained in the ministry. And I have said to them, kids, don't become pastors. But that won't be my decision to make. I've got dreams for them. But the decision will be Jesus' decision to make. For our job is to be about His business. Jesus' destiny was to be a sacrifice for the whole world. Wouldn't a 12-year-old boy be upset to be left behind and left alone? He chose to be left alone. He chose to be left alone. Jesus was the ultimate example of following God's will. And this moment of being home alone was the beginning of it all. Even though it would be 18 more years before his ministry officially launched, this was the beginning of it all. Jesus didn't need all the festivals and the hooplas that we put on in holiday celebrations. He didn't need all the family get-togethers. He needed to be about doing the Father's work. And that's what we should be about. As we are in this holiday season that is probably different than any we've ever gone through before, we should be about our Father's business. Why do we get discouraged? Because we've got our eyes on other things than the Father's business. And our job is to have our eyes on the Father's business, even if that feels like we're all alone. Even if it feels like we're battling all by ourselves. So the scene is set. Mary and Joseph went on and never even noticed that Jesus wasn't there with them. They didn't know what the Father's business was. Jesus would be in that temple speaking to some of the very ones that would lead him to the crucifixion, but even they didn't know what the Father's business was, and they were supposed to be the experts. But Jesus was home alone to be about the business of God. What is the Father's business for your life right now? Oh, Mike, it's way beyond anything that we can deal with. The Romans were running things as Jesus goes into the temple to do the Father's business. Don't tell me it can't be done because of America. What a lot of your problems are is that your hope is fixed in the President and the United States of America instead of your hope being fixed in Jesus Christ and Him alone. And that's why so many are struggling right now. I quoted a little thing to finish this message out. I will live expectantly, knowing God is at work. That's hard sometimes. Let me be honest with you right now. That's hard in my life right now. I'll admit it to you. But we've got to choose to live expectantly, because I promise you God is still at work. And He is doing wonderful things. And He will do wonderful things in your life, no matter what happens in Washington, D.C., no matter what happens in the United States of America. That's not what we are to be about. We are to be about our Father's business. And yes, I've made lots of people angry at me, but I will keep on beating that drum as long as there's breath left in me. On Christ, the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. America is sinking into judgment. But Jesus Christ stands alone to accomplish all that he needs to accomplish. He hung on the cross alone to accomplish all that he needed to accomplish. And as we said in the last video, when the time is full, Jesus is coming again. I hope that you all have a Merry Christmas, that you are very, very blessed. And next video, we're going to deal with resolutions. Thank you for watching.